Hello, my name is Liam Hart. I'm a psychology student at Grand Valley State University, and today I'm going to be presenting a study where we examine the effectiveness of a lecture-based aging course with a service learning component on reducing ageism in college students. So in this presentation, I'm first going to be going over what ageism is and giving a definition. Then I'll talk about the psychological mechanisms that give rise to ageism. Then I'll go into the current state of the literature for interventions that are effective in reducing ageism, and then that will lead into the current study and a discussion of our findings. Before getting into exactly what ageism is, I want to talk about the response to the COVID-19 pandemic as it relates to older adults. So especially at the beginning, the pandemic was labeled to be the problem of older adults. The media depicted the COVID-19 virus as only impacting older adults and that other age groups were not affected by it. Nursing home deaths were also explicitly separated from the deaths of other age groups, and it made it seem as if this high mortality rate was normal and expected. Social media also played a role in these attitudes with using the hashtag #BoomerRemover to refer to the virus. And these reflect an underlying issue in society that the lives of the elderly are seen as unimportant and in this pandemic not worthy of the combined effort of all groups in order to protect them as a vulnerable population. So it has exposed these pre-existing problems in our society and our perceptions on aging. So those responses to the COVID-19 pandemic are forms of ageism, and ageism can be thought of being similar to racism or sexism, but with respect to age. So any type of bigotry, which includes stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination towards a population based on age, constitutes ageism. Although it is not a popular ism that is discussed in mainstream media, it is certainly an important one with many implications. It affects all people across all cultures, so ageism is worldwide, and is also most prevalent among young adults, more than any other age group. So talking about some of the things that give rise to ageism, the first that we can look at is terror management theory, which states that features of older adults remind us of human vulnerability. So humans have this unique knowledge that our age will eventually lead to our death, and nobody is exempt from this law of nature. This results in a sort of existential anxiety about our own mortality, and this death anxiety leads to the rejection of older people because they are the group that is closer to death, and we reject anything that has to do with death, and we want to separate ourselves from that group. This was demonstrated in an experimental study by Martins et al. In 2004, where younger adults rated older adults lower than they would have normally compared to other younger adults if those same young adults had similar characteristics to older adults. So it was like they were looking at a reflection of their older self, and they rejected that in being closer to death, and this took the form of ageist behaviors and attitudes. In addition to that, characteristics and abilities that especially young people see to contribute to self-esteem diminish with age. This can include things like our cognitive ability and quickness, also our athletic ability, and also with the things like wrinkles becoming more prominent as we age. Younger adults see these as important things to rely on for self-esteem, and older adults do not have them as much. So something else that can be used to explain ageism is social identity theory, which is that we gain a sense of self-worth through our group membership. So there are two types of groups. We have in-groups, which is the group that you identify with, and then out-groups, which is all other groups. For me, that could be being a Grand Valley State University student, and then my out-group would be all other colleges and universities. As it relates to the current presentation, it could be young people versus old people, and this is a sort of us versus them mentality. So in society, there's a pervasive idea that older adults are of lower status and of lower utility to the community, and this is the result of an out-group bias, which means that we are biased to see the characteristics and attributes of our outgroups as being more negative. We do this in order to distinguish ourselves and our in-group in a more positive way, essentially putting down others in order to prop ourselves up. And so the implications of holding ageist stereotypes is explained in stereotype embodiment theory. So we hold these negative stereotypes about aging and ageist views, and they're internalized in our younger years. And this ageism, however, leads to self-ageism as we grow, and it becomes more relevant to us as we grow older in age. This self-ageism has been associated with numerous negative consequences on health, cognitive functioning, and longevity. So this stereotype embodiment theory can be thought of as a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, in that you will start to become those same ageist views and stereotypes that you hold as you age, and they become more relevant to you. And this adds to the importance of reducing ageism in young adults, because of course we want to reduce ageism in society in general to increase the well-being of our older adults and their feelings of acceptance, but it is also important to protect the young adults from their own ageist views, because they may impact them as they grow and become the older adults of tomorrow. Now I'll get into the interventions that have been shown to reduce ageism in the literature, the first of which being education about aging. And this gives people the knowledge needed to confront their own ageist views and stereotypes they may hold, clears up any misconceptions people may have about older people as a group. There's also reciprocal intergenerational interaction. Any intergroup contact is in optimal high-quality conditions is one of the most effective ways to reduce intergroup prejudice, and ageism is no exception to that rule. So just young adults interacting with older adults allow both of them to understand each other and accept each other on a deeper level. And Burns et al. In a 2019 review found a combination of these two interventions to be most effective, and they were most effective in younger populations. So a study that is similar to the design of our own used this combination, and here's the result of their table. You can see here that they found a total reduction in ageism as a result of having a course on aging and an intergenerational interaction in college students. In the current study, we had 32 Grand Valley Student University students enrolled in a Perspectives on Aging course. This consisted of mainly, it's an upper level psychology course, so it consisted mainly of junior and senior psychology students, and their perception of age was measured at the beginning and end of each semester. 32 students participated in both of the tests, and this makes for a pre-test, post-test design. So some things about the course. It includes a comprehensive view of aging from the psychological, social, cultural, and evolutionary perspectives, and it emphasizes the importance of having these multiple perspectives on aging when thinking and talking about it. There are 6 topics that are covered, the first of which being a cultural and historical views of aging, and then biological aging, which deals with why and how we age. Next being the evolving self and how our identity and self evolves as we age, and then styles of adult thinking, which has to do with cognitive decline and neurodegenerative diseases that come with aging and the factors that contribute to them. And there is the creative endeavors of the elderly and how aging affects the quantity and quality of creative work. And finally, we have the emergence of wisdom, which talks about what wisdom is and how it relates to aging. This course did not use a standard textbook and instead opted for a curated collection of research articles and book chapters that provides for a more in-depth understanding of each of these topics and perspectives on aging, as opposed to one standard textbook. And using these research articles gave the course a strong focus on the empirical research of aging. So with this course, there was also a service learning project where the groups of 3 students visited a local independent independent living center where they did an activity with the residents, and they designed these activities based on previous research that they found in multiple journal articles. And some of these activities that the students chose include painting, making birdhouses, or creating a playlist of the residents' favorite songs. In addition to a discussion of their experience in class, there was also a final term paper which involved review of the relevant literature and also a reflection of their experience at the retirement home, how they felt their chosen activity impacted them as young adults and the residents as older adults. And finally, they had a critical discussion of issues regarding intergenerational integration and interaction. So we measured ageism on the Fraboni Scale of Ageism, which is a popular scale to measure perceptions on aging. And it uses 29 statements to assess ageism, which are rated on a 1 to 4 scale, with 1 being strongly disagree and 4 being strongly agree. It's comprised of 3 subscales, the first of which being anti-collusion, which measures any stereotypes and general misconceptions people have about older adults. Most of the questions have to deal with generalizations. For instance, many old people just live in the past. And then there's the discrimination subscale, which is the more extreme form of prejudice, and it deals with attitudes towards segregation and just a fundamentally treating people different just based on their age, or even worse, just based on their age. And an example of a question from this subscale is that old people don't really need to use our community sports facilities. So getting at that attitudes towards segregation based on age. And finally, there's the avoidance subscale, which is comprised of questions that deal with people's willingness to socialize and interact with older adults, and also their beliefs on who older adults should be interacting with themselves. So one question is that I personally would not want to spend much time with an old person. And they would rate that as strongly disagree, strongly agree, or something in between. And so we had significant results on the total FSA. There was a significant decrease in ageism as measured on the FSA as a result of the course. And we also found a significant decrease in each of the subscales. We also had significance at the 0.01 level for the anti-collusion subscale and the FSA scores as a whole. This study provides preliminary evidence that a course on aging with an intergenerational interaction can reduce ageism in college students. This course led to a reduced perception of outgroup homogeneity in the students as it relates to older adults, meaning that they don't see older adults and the elderly as being as similar as they once did. They see them as being more individual, separate people. And there are also less misconceptions and increased acceptance and understanding of older adults in the students as a result of this course. And this may translate into their day-to-day life with just being more comfortable around older adults and more willing to interact with them. Another implication of these findings is that the students that are going into careers where they interact with elderly a lot, such as in the medical field and nursing fields or physical therapy, they may find more fulfillment in their interactions and just generally have better interactions and provide better care for these aging populations. So while we had significant findings, it is important to consider the limitations of this study when evaluating our findings. First of all, there was no control group, and there's no way to determine that it was not just simply taking a general education college course that led to this reduction in ageism. And there's also no way to separate between the education and service learning components. There's no way to know the relative effectiveness of each. There's also a limited sample size in this study with only 32 students. It does not provide us with a sufficient amount of statistical power. There's also a response bias that may be present just as a result of the content in the course having to do with aging. And there is also a lack of a behavioral measure. So there is no way to know that these reductions on the Fraboni scale of ageism will actually lead to different and better interactions between generations as the students walk in their day-to-day life. The long-term effectiveness is also still unknown for this course, in that we would have to do a 6-month or 12-month follow-up with the students to see the durability of these effects. However, the significant results of this study serve as an excellent basis for studies with larger sample sizes, control groups where we take measurements in multiple classes and have manipulate the service learning component and education component. And there will also be improved measurement, which may include inclusion of a behavioral measure or measuring the long-term effects through follow-up studies. So I want to thank you for listening to my presentation, and I will leave you with this quote from David Bowie on aging.